What if the key to peace lies not in trying to control everything around you, but in letting go of what you can't? This might sound counterintuitive, especially in a world that constantly tells us to take charge, plan ahead, and strive for certainty. But what if the very act of trying to control the uncontrollable is what keeps us stuck in anxiety and frustration? The ancient Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them." This simple yet profound idea lies at the heart of Stoic philosophy, a way of thinking that teaches us to focus on what's within our control and to accept the rest with grace. In this video, we'll dive into why the Stoics believed embracing uncertainty was not just a necessity, but a path to true freedom. How did they find strength in letting go, and how can this ancient wisdom help us navigate the chaos of modern life? Whether you're facing a personal challenge, feeling overwhelmed by the unpredictability of the world, or simply curious about how to live with more peace and resilience, the Stoic approach offers timeless insight. By the end of this video, you'll not only understand why the Stoics let go of control, you'll also discover how doing the same can transform your own life. So let's explore what it means to embrace the unexpected and find power in surrender. Stoicism teaches us to distinguish between what we can and cannot control. This principle, known as the Dichotomy of Control, is one of the most foundational ideas in Stoic philosophy. It reminds us that while external events like the weather, other people's actions, or even global circumstances are entirely beyond our power, our reactions, attitudes, and choices are firmly within our grasp. As Epictetus famously said, some things are in our control and others are not. This simple yet profound truth invites us to focus our energy where it truly matters, on our own thoughts and responses. Think about a situation like being stuck in traffic. You didn't choose the accident ahead, the slow-moving cars, or the sudden road closure. These are all external factors you can't control. But what you can control is how you respond to the delay. Do you let frustration take over, honking and grumbling, or do you take a deep breath, turn on some music, and accept the situation as it is? The same applies to something as unpredictable as a cancelled flight. The airline's decision is out of your hands, but your reaction, whether you remain calm or let anger spiral, is entirely up to you. This distinction isn't just about managing small inconveniences. It's about cultivating a mindset that brings peace and resilience in the face of life's uncertainties. By recognizing what's truly within your control, you free yourself from the exhausting effort of trying to manage the uncontrollable. So, here's a question to reflect on. What's one situation in your life where you've tried to control the uncontrollable? How might shifting your focus to what you can control change your experience? Imagine being one of the most powerful men in the ancient world, Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, revered as a philosopher king. Yet, even with all his authority, he faced challenges that were entirely beyond his control. Plagues swept through the empire, wars erupted unexpectedly, and political betrayals unfolded despite his best efforts. In his private writings, Marcus often reflected on the futility of trying to control everything. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This profound insight captures the essence of the Stoic perspective. The illusion of control is a source of endless frustration, and true freedom comes from letting go of it. The truth is, we often believe we have far more control over our lives than we actually do. Think about it. How much energy do we waste trying to micromanage every detail, only to feel stressed when things don't go as planned? The Stoics understood this deeply. Seneca, another towering figure in Stoic philosophy, once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." In other words, our fear of the unknown and our desire to control every outcome often create more pain than the actual events themselves. What if, instead of resisting life's unpredictability, we embraced it? What if we saw it not as a threat, but as an opportunity to grow? Consider a modern example: planning a vacation. You might spend weeks crafting the perfect itinerary, booking every activity, and mapping out every detail. But then, the weather turns, flights get delayed, or your luggage is lost. Suddenly, all that effort feels wasted and frustration sets in. The Stoics would argue that the problem isn't the unexpected events, it's our attachment to the plan. By clinging to the illusion of control, we set ourselves up for disappointment. But if we let go and adapt, we might discover unexpected joys: a hidden cafe, a spontaneous conversation, or a moment of quiet reflection we hadn't planned for. So, where in your life are you holding onto control that doesn't truly exist? Is it in your career, your relationships, or even your daily routines? The Stoic invitation is to pause and reflect. Are you trying to force outcomes, or are you allowing life to unfold as it will? This isn't about giving up or being passive. It's about recognizing what's within your power and what isn't. And when you do, you'll find a sense of peace that comes from aligning with reality rather than fighting against it. Everything in life is temporary. This simple truth is at the heart of Stoic philosophy, and it's a concept that can be both unsettling and liberating. The Stoics believed that impermanence isn't something to fear or resist, it's a fundamental part of existence. By learning to embrace it, we can free ourselves from the weight of clinging to outcomes, relationships, or even our own sense of control. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most famous Stoics, put it this way: "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." It's a stark reminder that nothing is guaranteed, not even the next moment. But instead of paralyzing us, this awareness can inspire us to live more intentionally, to focus on what truly matters. Think about a natural disaster, something like an earthquake or a flood. In an instant, lives are upended, homes are lost, and plans are shattered. These moments remind us how fragile our sense of stability really is. But they also show us resilience. People rebuild, adapt, and find ways to move forward, often with a renewed sense of purpose. The Stoics would argue that this ability to adapt, to accept impermanence, is what allows us to thrive even in the face of uncertainty. So here's a question to reflect on. How would your perspective shift if you fully accepted the impermanence of everything? What if, instead of clinging to the idea that things should stay the same, you embraced the idea that change is not only inevitable but also a source of growth? It's not about giving up on goals or relationships, it's about approaching them with a lighter grip, knowing that even the best-laid plans can shift in an instant. When we stop fighting against impermanence, we open ourselves to a deeper sense of peace and a more meaningful way of living. How do Stoics remain calm in the face of chaos? It's a question that feels especially relevant in a world that often feels unpredictable and overwhelming. At the heart of Stoic philosophy lies the practice of resilience, not by trying to control the external world, but by cultivating an unshakable internal foundation. As Seneca once wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." This idea is central to understanding how Stoics approach adversity. They don't avoid challenges, they see them as opportunities to grow stronger, to refine their character, and to deepen their inner peace. Take the example of Marcus Aurelius, one of the most famous Stoic philosophers and a Roman emperor who faced immense challenges during his rule. He led a vast empire through wars, plagues, and personal losses, yet he remained steadfast. How? By focusing on what he could control, his own thoughts, actions, and responses rather than the chaos around him. His writings in Meditations reveal a man constantly reminding himself to stay grounded. to accept what he couldn't change, and to find strength in the face of hardship. His resilience wasn't about ignoring pain or pretending everything was fine. It was about embracing reality, accepting life's difficulties, and finding meaning in the struggle. This is where Stoicism offers a powerful lesson for all of us. Resilience isn't about avoiding hardship, it's about how we respond to it. It's about training ourselves to see challenges not as obstacles, but as opportunities to build mental and emotional strength. Think about it. When was the last time you faced a difficult situation? Maybe it was a setback at work, a personal loss, or even a moment of self-doubt. What if, instead of resisting that challenge, you could reframe it as a chance to grow? What if you could see it as a test of your resilience, a moment to prove to yourself just how strong you truly are? So let's turn the question back to you. What's one challenge you faced that made you stronger? Take a moment to reflect on that experience. How did it shape you? How did it teach you something about yourself that you might not have discovered otherwise? Resilience isn't about being unbreakable. It's about learning how to bend without breaking and finding strength in the process. And that's exactly what the Stoics aimed to do, to prepare their minds for life's storms so that no matter what came their way, they could stand firm. Acceptance is not resignation, it's empowerment. At its core, Stoicism teaches us that acceptance is about reclaiming control over how we respond to life's challenges, not passively surrendering to them. Think about it this way: when we accept what we cannot change, we free ourselves from the exhausting cycle of resistance and frustration. Instead of wasting energy fighting against the inevitable, we redirect that energy toward what we can influence: our mindset, our actions, and our choices. As Epictetus wisely said, make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. Take, for example, losing a job. It's a situation that can feel devastating, filled with uncertainty and fear about the future. But the Stoic approach doesn't dwell on the loss itself. It focuses on how we respond to it. Acceptance doesn't mean we're happy about it or that we don't feel the sting. It means we acknowledge the reality of the situation without letting it define us. From there, we can ask ourselves, what's within my control? Maybe it's updating a resume, reaching out to a network, or even using the time to explore a new passion. Acceptance becomes the foundation for moving forward, not staying stuck. This same principle applies to relationships too. When a relationship ends, it's easy to spiral into regret or blame. But Stoicism reminds us that while we can't control another person's feelings or actions, we can control how we process the experience. Acceptance allows us to grieve, learn, and eventually grow from it, rather than clinging to what's already gone. So here's a question to reflect on. What's one thing you're struggling to accept right now? It could be a personal setback, a change in circumstances, or even something as simple as a bad day. By practicing acceptance, we don't erase the difficulty, we transform it into an opportunity to reclaim our agency and focus on what truly matters. Picture your life as a river. Its current never stops, always moving, always changing. You can't control where it flows or how fast it goes, but you can decide how you'll navigate it. This is the essence of the Stoic practice of emotional detachment. It's not about shutting down your feelings or becoming indifferent to life. Instead, it's about freeing yourself from the grip of outcomes you can't control. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. This simple yet profound idea is at the heart of Stoic detachment. It's about shifting your focus from what happens to you to how you respond. Take the story of Epictetus, for example. Born into slavery, he faced circumstances most of us can't even imagine. Yet he chose to focus on what he could control: his thoughts, his actions, his attitude. Even when his body was bound, his mind remained free. He didn't waste energy resenting his situation or wishing it were different. Instead, he practiced detachment, accepting the reality of his life while working within it to cultivate wisdom and resilience. His example shows us that no matter how challenging life gets, we always have the power to choose how we engage with it. Now think about your own life for a moment. Where do you feel stuck, frustrated, or overwhelmed? Is it a relationship, a job, or a goal that seems just out of reach? What if, instead of clinging to the outcome, you chose to let go of the need to control it? This doesn't mean giving up or stopping your efforts. It means releasing the emotional weight of expectations and finding peace in the process itself. Detachment isn't about apathy, it's about clarity. It's about recognizing that while you can't always control what happens, you can always control how you respond. So, where in your life could detachment bring you peace? What might it look like to approach that situation with a little more freedom and a little less fear? What if the unexpected is life's greatest teacher? For the Stoics, this isn't just a philosophical idea, it's a way of life. When something doesn't go according to plan, they don't see it as a setback or a stroke of bad luck. Instead, they view it as a chance to grow, to learn, and to become stronger. As Seneca once said, luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. In other words, the unexpected isn't something to fear, it's something to embrace, because it's in those moments of unpredictability that we discover what we're truly capable of. Think about it, how often do we grow the most? Is it when everything is going smoothly or when life throws us a curveball? A modern example might be losing a job. It's easy to see that as a failure, but what if it's actually an opportunity to pivot, to explore a new career path, or to build skills you never knew you needed? Many people look back on moments like that and realize they were the catalyst for something even greater than they could have imagined. The unexpected forces us to adapt, to think creatively, and to step outside our comfort zones, and that's where real growth happens. So, what's one unexpected event that changed your life for the better? Maybe it was a relationship that didn't work out but led you to someone who truly understands you. Or perhaps it was a sudden health scare that made you reevaluate your priorities and live more intentionally. The Stoics remind us that these moments aren't random, they're invitations to become the best version of ourselves. The next time life takes an unexpected turn, instead of resisting it, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I use this to grow? Because in the end, it's not what happens to us that defines us, it's how we respond. Stoics believe the present moment is all we truly have. This isn't just a philosophical idea, it's a way of life. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most famous Stoics, once wrote, "Confine yourself to the present." He wasn't suggesting we ignore the past or future entirely, but rather that we stop letting them dominate our thoughts and actions. After all, the past is already gone and the future is uncertain. The only place where we have any real control is right here, right now. Think about it. How often do you catch yourself replaying old conversations in your head, wishing you'd said something differently? Or maybe you're constantly planning for tomorrow, next week, or even years from now, only to feel overwhelmed by all the possibilities. While reflection and preparation have their place, the Stoics remind us that excessive focus on what's already happened or what might happen pulls us away from the only moment we can truly influence, the present. Here's a practical way to bring this idea into your daily life. Mindfulness in simple tasks. Take something as routine as washing the dishes. Instead of rushing through it while your mind races with thoughts about work, relationships, or your to-do list, try to focus entirely on the task at hand. Feel the warmth of the water, notice the texture of the soap, and pay attention to the rhythm of your movements. It might sound small, but this kind of presence can be incredibly grounding. So, here's a question to reflect on. How often do you find yourself dwelling on the past or future instead of the present? It's easy to get caught up in what's already happened or what's yet to come, but the Stoics challenge us to redirect that energy. By practicing presence, we not only reduce unnecessary stress, but also open ourselves up to fully experiencing the moments that make up our lives. And isn't that what living is all about? Letting go is the ultimate act of freedom. For the Stoics, this idea wasn't just a comforting thought, it was the foundation of a life well lived. Think about it, how much of our stress, frustration, and unhappiness comes from trying to control things that are, by their very nature, beyond our control. The Stoics believed that true liberation comes not from holding on tighter, but from releasing our grip altogether. As Epictetus once said, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. And what he meant by freedom wasn't the absence of responsibility or the ability to do whatever we want. It was the freedom from being ruled by external circumstances, from letting our happiness depend on outcomes we can't dictate. Take, for example, someone who decides to stop chasing society's definition of success, the big house, the fancy title, the endless climb up the ladder. Imagine the weight that lifts when they realize they don't have to measure their worth by those standards. They're no longer bound by the fear of falling short or the pressure to keep up. Instead, they focus on what they can control, their own values, their actions, their mindset. That's where the freedom lies, not in the absence of challenges, but in the ability to face them without being consumed by them. So, what's one thing you could let go of to feel freer? Maybe it's the need for everyone's approval, or the obsession with perfection, or even the fear of failure. Whatever it is, consider this. The moment you release it, you create space for something far more valuable: peace of mind. And that's the kind of freedom the Stoics believed was worth striving for. The Stoics had a profound understanding of fate, one that might seem at odds with our modern desire for control. They believed the universe operated under a grand design, a kind of providence where everything unfolded as it should. This wasn't about blind submission, but rather an acceptance that some things are beyond our power to change. Seneca, one of the great Stoic thinkers, put it beautifully when he said, "Fate leads the willing and drags the unwilling." In other words, you can either align yourself with the natural order of things or resist it and suffer needlessly. But here's the key: Stoicism doesn't ask you to give up on effort or responsibility. Instead, it invites you to focus on what you can control: your thoughts, your actions, and your reactions to what life throws your way. Take the story of Epictetus, who was born into slavery. Despite his circumstances, he didn't see himself as a victim of fate. Instead, he used his situation as a training ground for his character. He couldn't control being enslaved, but he could control how he responded to it, choosing to cultivate wisdom, resilience, and inner freedom. This is the Stoic view of fate in action. It's not about resignation, but about finding agency within the boundaries of what's possible. So, how does this apply to us? Think about the moments in your life where things didn't go as planned. Maybe it was a job you didn't get, a relationship that ended, or an unexpected setback. The Stoics would ask, did you waste energy fighting what you couldn't change, or did you focus on what you could do next? How do you feel about the idea of fate in your own life? Is it a comforting thought, knowing that some things are out of your hands, or does it feel unsettling to think that not everything is within your control? The Stoic approach challenges us to find peace in the balance, accepting what we can't change while pouring our energy into what we can. What if gratitude is the antidote to frustration? It's a question worth sitting with for a moment. The Stoics believed that gratitude wasn't just a feel-good emotion. It was a powerful tool for reshaping how we see the world. When everything feels like it's slipping out of our control, gratitude helps us anchor ourselves in what we do have rather than what we lack. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most famous Stoic philosophers, put it beautifully when he said, When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive. It's a reminder that even the simplest things, a breath, a sunrise, or a moment of quiet, are gifts worth acknowledging. Think about it. How often do we get caught up in what's going wrong or what we don't have? It's easy to focus on the frustrations, the traffic jam, the missed deadline, the plan that didn't work out. But what if, instead of dwelling on those things, we pause to notice the small, daily joys? The warmth of your first cup of coffee, the sound of laughter, or even the fact that you have a roof over your head and food on the table. These might seem like small things, but when we take the time to appreciate them, they can shift our entire perspective. Here's a modern example. Imagine you're stuck in a long line at the grocery store. You could let frustration take over, or you could use that moment to reflect on the fact that you have access to food, that you're able to afford it, and that you're surrounded by abundance. It's not about ignoring the inconvenience, it's about choosing where to place your attention. Gratitude doesn't erase life's challenges, but it does give us a way to navigate them with a little more peace and perspective. So let me ask you this: what's one thing you're grateful for today? It doesn't have to be grand or life-changing. It could be as simple as a kind word from a friend or the feeling of sunlight on your face. The Stoics would tell you that this act of noticing, this deliberate shift in focus, is where true resilience begins. Because when we train ourselves to see the good, even in the midst of chaos, we reclaim a sense of control over our own mind. And isn't that the most powerful kind of control there is? Stoics prepare for the worst to appreciate the present. This might sound counterintuitive at first. Why would anyone dwell on potential losses or hardships? But the Stoic practice of negative visualization isn't about pessimism. It's about preparation. By imagining the worst-case scenarios, we train ourselves to face life's uncertainties with courage and clarity. As Seneca once said, "He who is brave is prepared for all outcomes." This exercise isn't meant to scare us, it's meant to ground us. When we confront what we fear most, we often realize that even the worst outcomes are survivable, and that realization can be incredibly freeing. Take a moment to consider your own life. What's one thing you deeply value? Your health, a relationship, your career. Now, imagine just for a moment what it would feel like to lose it. It's uncomfortable, isn't it? But here's the power of this practice. By visualizing that loss, you begin to appreciate what you have right now. You start to see how much you've taken for granted, and that awareness can transform the way you live. Negative visualization also has a practical side. It helps reduce anxiety by stripping away the element of surprise. If you've already imagined losing something, the fear of it happening loses its grip on you. For example, think about someone who's anxious about public speaking. By visualizing the worst, stumbling over words, facing a silent audience, they can prepare themselves mentally. They might even laugh at the absurdity of it, realizing that even if it happens, it's not the end of the world. So, here's a question for you. What's one thing you fear losing, and how can you prepare for it? By practicing this Stoic exercise, you're not just bracing for hardship, you're building resilience, cultivating gratitude, and finding peace in the present moment. It's a reminder that life's uncertainties don't have to control us. They can instead teach us how to live more fully. What if failure is just feedback? For the Stoics, failure isn't the end of the road, it's a stepping stone. It's not about what happens to you, but how you respond to it. As Epictetus famously said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. This perspective shifts the narrative entirely. Instead of seeing failure as a defeat, Stoics see it as a teacher, a moment to reflect, learn, and grow. Take the story of Thomas Edison, for example. When he was inventing the light bulb, he famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Each so-called failure was a lesson, a piece of feedback that brought him closer to success. That's the Stoic mindset in action, seeing every misstep as an opportunity to refine your approach, to build resilience, and to move forward with greater wisdom. So, what's one failure that taught you an important lesson? Maybe it was a job you didn't get, a project that didn't go as planned, or a relationship that didn't work out. Whatever it was, chances are it shaped you in ways you might not have expected. The Stoics remind us that failure isn't something to fear or avoid. It's something to embrace, because it's in those moments that we often discover our greatest strength. Stoics find freedom in simplicity. This is not about deprivation or living with less for the sake of it, but about clearing away the noise to focus on what truly matters. Think about it. How often do we complicate our lives with endless wants, social pressures, or the pursuit of things that don't actually bring us lasting fulfillment? Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life," and that's a powerful reminder. The Stoics believed that by stripping away the unnecessary, we create space for clarity, peace, and genuine contentment. Take, for example, the practice of simplifying your daily routine. Imagine starting your morning without the constant buzz of notifications, the clutter of unused items in your home, or the mental weight of overcommitting to things that drain your energy. When you reduce these distractions, you're left with more time and mental bandwidth to focus on what truly aligns with your values, whether that's spending quality time with loved ones, pursuing a meaningful goal, or simply enjoying moments of stillness. So, here's a question to reflect on. What's one area of your life where you could embrace more simplicity? Maybe it's decluttering your physical space, stepping back from social media, or saying no to commitments that don't serve you. By intentionally choosing to live with less, you might just discover that you gain so much more freedom, focus, and a deeper sense of purpose. Time is like a river. It flows endlessly, and no matter how much we might wish to stop it, slow it down, or hold onto it, it moves forward without pause. The Stoics understood this deeply. They saw time as one of the most precious resources we have, something that, once gone, can never be reclaimed. Seneca, one of the great Stoic thinkers, put it best: "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." This isn't just a poetic observation, it's a call to action. The Stoics believed that how we spend our time is a direct reflection of what we truly value. Think about it. Every moment we spend worrying about things outside our control, every hour lost to trivial distractions, is time we can never get back. The Stoics urged us to focus on what truly matters: our character, our relationships, our purpose. They reminded us that time is finite, and wasting it is the greatest disservice we can do to ourselves. Imagine someone who spends their days chasing fleeting pleasures or endlessly scrolling through social media. At the end of their life, what will they have to show for it? Now picture someone who uses their time intentionally investing in meaningful work, deepening their connections, and growing as a person. The difference is stark, isn't it? Here's a simple but powerful question to reflect on. How are you spending your time, and is it aligned with your values? Are you letting the river of time carry you aimlessly, or are you steering your boat with purpose? The Stoics didn't just want us to be aware of time, they wanted us to act. To make every moment count, because in the end, it's not about how much time we have, but what we choose to do with it. How often do you pause to reflect on your life? In the busyness of our days, it's easy to get caught up in the noise, reacting to situations without really understanding why we act the way we do. This is where the Stoic practice of self-reflection comes in, a powerful tool to bring clarity, purpose, and alignment to our lives. The Stoics believed that taking time each day to look inward wasn't just helpful, it was essential for living a meaningful life. Marcus Aurelius, one of Stoicism's greatest practitioners, famously wrote in his Meditations, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be." B1. This isn't just a call to action. It's a reminder that self-reflection is the bridge between ideals and reality. It's about assessing our actions, thoughts, and choices to see if they truly align with the values we claim to hold. Without this practice, we risk drifting through life, guided by habit or external pressures rather than by intention. So, how did the Stoics approach self-reflection? One of their most common tools was journaling. Each evening, they would sit down and review their day, asking themselves questions like, what did I do well? Where did I fall short? How can I improve tomorrow? This wasn't about self-criticism, but about honest evaluation, a way to learn from mistakes and celebrate progress. It's a habit that helps us stay grounded, even when life feels chaotic. Imagine ending your day by writing down one lesson you learned or one moment where you responded with patience instead of anger. Over time, these small reflections add up, helping you grow into the person you aspire to be. So, let me ask you, what's one thing you've learned about yourself through reflection? Whether it's a strength you've discovered or an area where you'd like to improve, taking the time to reflect can be the first step toward becoming the best version of yourself. Stoics see criticism as an opportunity for growth. For them, the opinions of others are not something to fear or resent, but rather a chance to reflect and improve. This perspective is rooted in the belief that we can't control what others think or say about us, but we can control how we respond. As Epictetus wisely said, "If anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what is said, but answer, 'He was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone.'" In other words, criticism is a mirror. It shows us something about ourselves, but it doesn't define us. Think about it this way: when someone criticizes you, they're offering you a glimpse into their perspective. Sometimes that perspective might be flawed or unfair, but even then, there's value in understanding how others see you. And if the criticism is valid, it's a gift. It's an opportunity to grow, to refine your character, and to become a better version of yourself. The Stoic approach isn't about brushing off criticism or pretending it doesn't sting. It's about separating your emotional reaction from the lesson that might be hidden within it. Consider this example. Imagine you've worked hard on a project and someone points out a flaw in your approach. Your first instinct might be to defend yourself or dismiss their feedback. But what if instead you paused and asked yourself, is there truth in what they're saying? Can I use this to improve? That shift in mindset from defensiveness to curiosity is the essence of the Stoic response to criticism. It's not about agreeing with every critique, but about being open to the possibility that you can learn from it. So, how do you typically respond to criticism? Do you find yourself getting defensive, or do you see it as a chance to grow? Reflecting on this can help you approach feedback with a little more grace and a lot less resistance. After all, as the Stoics remind us, the only thing we truly control is how we choose to engage with the world around us, criticism included. What if living virtuously is the ultimate goal? For the Stoics, this wasn't just a philosophical idea, it was the foundation of a meaningful life. They believed that virtue, wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance was the only true good, the one thing that could never be taken from you. Seneca put it simply, virtue is nothing else than right reason. It's about aligning your actions with what's true, fair, and good, regardless of external circumstances. Think about it this way: wealth, fame, and even health can all shift or fade. They're not entirely within your control, but virtue, that's different. It's something you can cultivate every single day, no matter what life throws at you. Imagine someone who faces a major setback, a job loss, a health crisis, or a personal betrayal. Instead of crumbling, they respond with wisdom, choosing to see the situation as an opportunity to grow. They act with courage, facing their fears head-on. They strive for justice, treating others with fairness even when it's hard, and they practice temperance, resisting the urge to react impulsively or let their emotions take the wheel. Take Malala Yousafzai, for example. After surviving an attack for advocating girls' education, she didn't retreat or seek revenge. Instead, she doubled down on her mission with remarkable courage and wisdom, fighting for justice and equality. Her story is a modern embodiment of Stoic virtues in action. So let me ask you, which Stoic virtue do you feel most drawn to? Is it wisdom, the ability to see clearly and make sound decisions? Courage, the strength to face challenges without fear? Justice, the commitment to fairness and equality? Or temperance, the discipline to stay balanced and in control? Think about how you could bring more of that virtue into your own life. Because in the end, it's not about what happens to us, it's about how we respond, how we choose to live, and the kind of person we strive to become. The Stoics were deeply aware of how desire shapes our lives, and their teachings on this topic remain strikingly relevant today. Centuries ago, philosophers like Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius observed how unchecked desires often lead to frustration, anxiety, and a sense of lack. They argued that true freedom comes not from acquiring more but from learning to want less. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." In other words, our desires, what we fixate on, chase, or cling to, shape who we are and how we experience the world. If our thoughts are consumed by wanting, we can never truly be at peace. The Stoic approach to desire isn't about rejecting everything or living a life of deprivation. Instead, it's about distinguishing between what's necessary and what's excessive. Think about it. How often do we chase things not because we truly need them, but because we've been conditioned to believe they'll make us happy? A bigger house, a newer car, the latest gadget. These are desires that, once fulfilled, often leave us wanting even more. The Stoics believed that by reducing these unnecessary desires, we free ourselves from the endless cycle of dissatisfaction. Take the story of Diogenes, the ancient philosopher who famously lived in a barrel. Alexander the Great, impressed by Diogenes' reputation, once visited him and offered to grant any wish. Diogenes simply replied, "Step aside, you're blocking my sunlight." Here was a man who had let go of material desires so completely that even the most powerful ruler in the world couldn't tempt him. While most of us aren't called to live in a barrel, Diogenes' example reminds us that peace comes not from what we have but from what we choose to let go of. So, what about you? What's one desire you could release to find greater peace in your life? Maybe it's the need for constant validation, the pressure to always be productive, or even the endless pursuit of material possessions. By reflecting on this, you're not just engaging with Stoic philosophy, you're taking the first step toward a calmer, more centered way of living. The Stoics teach us that when we let go of what we don't truly need, we make space for what truly matters: clarity, contentment, and a deeper connection to the present moment. Stoics strive for balance in all things. This isn't just about staying calm when life is easy. It's about finding that calm when everything around you feels chaotic. The Stoic ideal of equanimity is about mastering your emotions, not letting external events dictate your inner state. As Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Think about that for a moment. True freedom, in the Stoic sense, comes from being in control of how you respond to life's ups and downs, not from controlling the world around you. Imagine this: you're in the middle of a high-pressure situation at work. Deadlines are looming, your team is stressed, and everything seems to be going wrong. A Stoic in this scenario wouldn't panic or lash out. Instead, they'd pause, take a deep breath, and focus on what they can control: their own actions and reactions. They'd remind themselves that the chaos around them is just noise, and that their inner calm is what truly matters. this isn't about suppressing emotions, it's about not letting those emotions take the wheel. Now consider your own life. How do you maintain your composure when challenges arise? Do you find yourself reacting immediately, or do you take a moment to step back and assess? Equanimity isn't about being emotionless, it's about not being ruled by those emotions. It's about finding that steady ground within yourself, no matter what storms are raging outside. And the beauty of it is, this is a skill you can practice every single day. Start small. The next time something doesn't go your way, pause. Ask yourself, what can I control here? What's truly mine to manage? That's where your power lies. How do Stoics navigate relationships without losing themselves? This is a question that strikes at the heart of what it means to live a balanced, fulfilling life. Stoicism teaches us that while relationships are essential to our well-being, they must be approached with a sense of emotional independence. Think of it like this: you can love someone deeply without letting their emotions or actions dictate your inner peace. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once said, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you." This isn't about cutting people off or being cold, it's about recognizing that the company you keep shapes who you are. Stoics believe in cultivating relationships that uplift and inspire, rather than drain or destabilize you. But how does this work in practice? Let's say you have a friend who constantly leans on you for emotional support but rarely reciprocates. A Stoic approach would involve setting clear, compassionate boundaries. You can care for them without taking on their emotional burden as your own. This isn't selfish, it's self-preserving. By maintaining your own emotional equilibrium, you're better equipped to help others without losing yourself in the process. It's like being a lighthouse. You offer guidance and stability, but you remain firmly anchored, no matter how stormy the seas around you become. This balance between connection and independence is a delicate dance, and it's something we all struggle with at times. How do you show up for the people you love without letting their struggles consume you? How do you remain open and loving while still protecting your own peace? These are questions worth reflecting on because they touch on the very essence of what it means to live well with others. So, how do you balance connection and independence in your relationships? It's not about finding a perfect formula, it's about practicing awareness, compassion, and above all, self-respect. Stoics value humility as a path to wisdom, and this principle is deeply woven into their philosophy. Humility isn't about diminishing oneself or shrinking from confidence. It's about staying grounded, open, and teachable. It's the quiet strength of knowing you don't have all the answers, and that's okay. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most revered Stoic philosophers, put it this way: "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." What he's pointing to here is the power of rising above pettiness, pride, or ego. Humility allows us to respond to challenges with grace, rather than reacting with defensiveness or arrogance. It's a reminder that our worth isn't tied to being right or proving others wrong. It's tied to how we grow and adapt through life's lessons. Think about a leader who embodies this kind of humility, someone in a position of authority who doesn't let ego cloud their judgment, who listens more than they speak, and who values the perspectives of others even when they disagree. That kind of leader inspires trust and respect, not because they demand it, but because they earn it through their willingness to learn and grow. Humility in leadership or in any role creates space for collaboration, innovation, and connection. It's a trait that transforms not just the individual but the environment around them. Now consider your own life. How has humility shaped your personal growth? Maybe there was a moment when admitting you were wrong led to a breakthrough, or when letting go of the need to control a situation brought unexpected clarity. Humility often shows up in small, quiet ways, like choosing curiosity over defensiveness or choosing to listen instead of interrupt. It's in these moments that we open ourselves to deeper understanding and ultimately to wisdom. So, as you reflect on this, ask yourself, where can humility guide you next? How might it help you navigate the unexpected with a little more ease and a lot more grace? Adversity is the forge of character. Those words might sound bold, even intimidating, but they lie at the heart of Stoic philosophy. For the Stoics, challenges aren't roadblocks, they're opportunities. Opportunities to test our resolve, to refine our virtues, and to emerge stronger than we were before. Seneca, one of the great Stoic thinkers, put it this way: fire tests gold, adversity tests the brave. Just as gold is purified in the heat of a flame, so too are we tempered by the difficulties we face. It's through struggle that we discover our true strength. Think about the story of Nelson Mandela. For 27 years, he endured the hardship of imprisonment, yet he emerged not with bitterness, but with a vision of reconciliation and unity for his nation. Mandela didn't see his adversity as a defeat. He saw it as a chance to grow, to lead, and to inspire. In the Stoic view, every challenge carries this potential, if we choose to see it that way. So take a moment to reflect. What's one challenge that has shaped who you are today? Maybe it was a personal loss, a professional setback, or even a moment of self-doubt. How did you respond? Did it break you, or did it build you? The Stoics would argue that it's not the challenge itself that defines us, but how we rise to meet it. Adversity, in their eyes, is not something to fear or avoid. It's the very thing that molds us into who we're meant to be. How can mindfulness align with Stoic principles? At first glance, mindfulness might seem like a modern concept, but when you look closer, it's deeply intertwined with the Stoic way of life. Both practices emphasize the importance of focusing on the present moment, accepting what is within our control, and letting go of what isn't. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The present is all that they can give up, since that is all you have." This simple yet profound statement reminds us that the only thing we truly possess is the here and now. Mindfulness, in its essence, is about being fully present, aware of our thoughts, feelings, and surroundings without judgment. And that's exactly what Stoicism encourages us to do, to observe life as it unfolds without clinging to the past or worrying about the future. Think about it this way: when we practice mindfulness, we're training ourselves to notice our thoughts and emotions without letting them dictate our actions. This is incredibly powerful when paired with Stoic principles like acceptance and detachment. For example, if you're feeling frustrated because of something outside your control, mindfulness helps you recognize that frustration without letting it consume you. You acknowledge it, but you don't let it define your day. This is Stoicism in action, accepting what you can't change and focusing your energy on what you can. So, how can you incorporate mindfulness into your daily routine? It doesn't have to be complicated. Start with something as simple as taking a few moments each morning to sit quietly and focus on your breath. Notice the rise and fall of your chest, the sensation of air entering and leaving your body. If your mind starts to wander, and it will gently bring your attention back to your breath. This small act of grounding yourself in the present can set the tone for the rest of your day. Or try practicing mindfulness during everyday activities like washing dishes or walking. Pay attention to the sensations, the sounds, the textures. These moments of awareness can become opportunities to practice Stoic principles, helping you stay centered and resilient no matter what life throws your way. Now, here's a question for you. How do you practice mindfulness in your own life? Do you have a routine that helps you stay present, or are there certain moments when you find it easier to focus on the here and now? Mindfulness, like Stoicism, is a practice. It's something we cultivate over time, not something we perfect overnight. But when we commit to it, we start to see how these two philosophies work together, guiding us toward a calmer, more intentional way of living. Stoics redefine success as living in alignment with virtue. For them, it's not about the accolades, the wealth, or the external markers of achievement that society often glorifies. Instead, it's about cultivating an inner character rooted in wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline. As Epictetus once said, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. This simple yet profound idea shifts the focus from what we accumulate to how we live our actions, our choices, and the principles we uphold, even when no one is watching. Think about it. How often do we measure success by the size of our bank accounts, the job titles we hold, or the recognition we receive? These things can be fleeting, and they're often outside our control. The Stoics remind us that true success lies in what we can control: our own thoughts, decisions, and responses. It's about living a life of integrity, where your actions align with your deepest values, regardless of the outcomes. Take, for example, the story of a business leader who chose to walk away from a lucrative deal because it compromised their ethical standards. On the surface, it might seem like a loss, a missed opportunity for financial gain. But from a Stoic perspective, it's a victory. By prioritizing integrity over profit, this person demonstrated a commitment to virtue, proving that success isn't measured by what you gain, but by who you become in the process. So here's a question to reflect on. How do you define success? Does it align with your values, or are you chasing goals that might leave you feeling empty in the long run? The Stoic approach invites us to look inward, to reassess what truly matters, and to find fulfillment not in external validation, but in the quiet satisfaction of living a virtuous life. How do Stoics balance detachment with compassion? At first glance, it might seem like these two ideas are at odds. How can you care deeply for others while also maintaining emotional distance? But Stoicism teaches us that compassion and detachment aren't mutually exclusive. In fact, they can work together in harmony. As Seneca once said, wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness. This idea reminds us that compassion isn't about being consumed by another person's pain. Instead, it's about seeing their humanity and responding with wisdom and care. Let's break this down. Imagine a friend is going through a tough time. Maybe they've lost their job or are dealing with a personal crisis. A Stoic approach wouldn't involve drowning in their sorrow or taking on their pain as your own. Instead, you'd recognize their struggle, offer support, and help them find clarity or solutions. You're present for them, but you're not overwhelmed. This is the balance, caring deeply without allowing their emotions to dictate your own state of mind. Think of it like a lighthouse. A lighthouse doesn't get swept away by the stormy seas around it. It stands firm, offering guidance and light to those in need. In the same way, Stoics aim to be a steady presence for others, providing support without losing their inner stability. Compassion, in this sense, becomes an act of strength rather than a source of emotional exhaustion. Now, let's bring this to life with an example. Picture a nurse working in a busy hospital. Every day, she sees patients in pain, families under stress, and situations that could easily drain her emotionally. But instead of letting those emotions take over, she focuses on what she can control: her ability to provide care, her attention to detail, and her calm demeanor. She doesn't ignore the suffering around her. She acknowledges it and responds with kindness and competence. That's Stoic compassion in action. So how do you practice compassion without losing yourself? It starts with understanding that you can't help others effectively if you're emotionally depleted. By maintaining a sense of detachment, you're better equipped to offer genuine support. It's not about shutting off your emotions, it's about channeling them wisely. Ask yourself, how can I be kind without sacrificing my own peace? How can I care for others while staying grounded in what I can control? These questions invite you to reflect on your own approach to compassion, blending empathy with the resilient Stoicism encourages. Stoics see death as a natural part of life, not something to fear or avoid, but rather an inevitable reality to accept with clarity and composure. For them, contemplating mortality isn't morbid, it's a tool for living more intentionally. Marcus Aurelius, one of Stoicism's most famous practitioners, once said, "Death smiles at us all we can do is smile back." This perspective isn't about resignation, it's about recognizing that death gives life its urgency and meaning. When we acknowledge that our time is limited, we're more likely to focus on what truly matters, our values, relationships, and the legacy we leave behind. Take the example of Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher who lived with the understanding that life is fleeting. Born into slavery, he faced hardships that could have consumed him, but instead, he used the awareness of his mortality to live with purpose and resilience. Even in the face of adversity or the threat of death, he remained calm, teaching others to do the same. His life serves as a powerful reminder that when we stop fearing the end, we can embrace the present with greater courage and gratitude. So, how does thinking about death influence the way you live? Does it sharpen your focus on what's important, or does it leave you feeling unsettled? For Stoics, this reflection isn't meant to paralyze but to empower. It's a call to let go of trivial worries, to stop postponing what matters, and to live each day as if it could be your last, not out of fear but out of reverence for the time you have. When we accept death as a natural part of existence, we free ourselves to live more fully, more authentically, and with a deeper sense of peace. What does it mean to be truly courageous? At first glance, courage might seem like facing danger without fear, but the Stoics offer a deeper perspective. For them, courage isn't about the absence of fear, it's about moving forward despite the fear. It's about standing firm in the face of uncertainty, not because it's easy, but because it's the right thing to do. As Seneca once said, sometimes even to live is an act of courage. Think about that for a moment. Sometimes simply getting through the day, persisting through hardship, or choosing to stay present in the midst of chaos requires more bravery than any physical act. Take, for example, the story of a person who loses their job unexpectedly. On the surface, it might not seem like a dramatic life or death situation. But the courage it takes to face that setback, to pick yourself up, and to keep moving forward, that's Stoic courage in action. It's not about grand gestures or heroic deeds. It's about the quiet, often unnoticed resilience that defines how we respond to life's challenges. It's about integrity, resolve, and the willingness to confront what we cannot control with a steady heart. So, what's one situation where you've had to summon courage? Maybe it was standing up for someone when it wasn't popular, or perhaps it was making a difficult decision that you knew would change the course of your life. Courage doesn't always look the same, but it always requires us to step into the unknown with a sense of purpose. The Stoics remind us that courage is less about the external circumstances and more about the internal commitment to act with virtue, even when it's hard. And that's a practice we can all cultivate, one small act of bravery at a time. Change is the only constant in life. It's a truth we all know but often resist, clinging to the familiar even when it no longer serves us. Stoicism, however, offers a radically different perspective. Instead of fearing change, the Stoics saw it as an essential part of existence, a force to be embraced, not avoided. For them, change wasn't something to dread. It was an opportunity for growth, a chance to align more deeply with the natural flow of life. As Epictetus once said, "No great thing is created suddenly." Change, even when it feels disruptive, is part of the process of becoming. Consider the story of someone like Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king who led Rome through war, plague, and personal loss. Imagine the weight of those responsibilities, the constant shifts in his circumstances. Yet, instead of resisting, he chose to see each challenge as a teacher. In his writings, he often reminded himself to accept the impermanence of life, to adapt with grace, and to find strength in the midst of uncertainty. His ability to embrace change didn't make it easy, but it allowed him to navigate it with wisdom and resilience. But what about us? How do we typically respond when life throws us a curveball? Do we resist clinging to what was, or do we open ourselves to the possibilities of what could be? The Stoic approach invites us to shift our mindset, to see change not as a threat but as an invitation to grow. It's about recognizing that while we can't control what happens to us, we can control how we respond. So here's a question to reflect on. How do you typically respond to change, and how could you improve? What might it look like to meet life's shifts with curiosity rather than fear? So what does it all come down to? At its core, Stoicism teaches us that life is unpredictable, and much of what happens around us is beyond our control. But here's the beautiful paradox. By letting go of that need to control everything, we actually gain something far more valuable: peace of mind. Resilience, presence, and acceptance aren't just lofty ideals. They're tools we can use every single day to navigate the chaos of modern life. When we stop resisting what we can't change and instead focus on how we respond, we find a deeper sense of calm and clarity. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most famous Stoics, once said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." Think about that for a moment. Your thoughts, your perspective, your mindset are the one thing you do have control over, and that's where your power lies. When you choose to see challenges as opportunities for growth, when you embrace the unexpected as a chance to adapt and learn, you're living the Stoic way. So, as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this. How can you start applying these principles in your own life? Maybe it's by pausing before reacting to a stressful situation, or by reminding yourself that not everything needs to go according to plan. Stoicism isn't about perfection, it's about progress. It's about finding strength in the face of uncertainty and discovering freedom in the things you can't control. If this resonates with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. How do you practice resilience in your daily life? What's one area where you could embrace the unexpected a little more? Share your experiences in the comments below. Let's learn from each other. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe for more Stoic wisdom. Until next time, take a deep breath, let go of what you can't control, and focus on what truly matters: the quality of your thoughts and the way you choose to live.